I was given 12 days to make a game, but what kind of game am I making? Well, that decision is not up to me. The game's theme is actually decided by whatever the judges choose in the Acerola Jam 0. If you haven't heard of it before, let me explain. The Acerola Jam 0 was a game jam hosted by the YouTuber Acerola. He's a somewhat niche game development channel that talks about a lot of cool graphical stuff. But what we're mainly concerned about today is the theme of the game that we're making. Is it going to be a genre? Or will it be some phrase that we need to base our game off of? Well, the answer to that is, drumrolls please, Aberration. Okay, Aberration? That's a lot more abstract of a theme than what I was expecting, but Acerola has provided a few definitions, so let me think of some ideas while you guys go over that. The definition provided is more specific, stating that it means a departure from what is normal, usual, or expected, typically one that is unwelcome. He provided further explanation that I'll flash on screen here, but let me move on from this so we can get to what you're really here for. After some brainstorming, I had the perfect idea in mind for the game I wanted to make. I had this idea in mind about this psychedelic story of a man going through dreamlike hallucinations as he dives deeper and deeper into his own mind. The goal is to create environments that are similar to stuff from Amori. However, as the man goes further into his own mind, the more horrific the environment becomes, and you'll be chased by this creature throughout it all. I also decided that the game's name would be Aberrational, which is a little bit on the nose given the theme, but it connects to the story I'm trying to go for. Anyways, that's enough of an idea to get started, so let's get on with the development. Day 1 was spent working on setting up my own custom player movement and audio system tools that I had developed previously. The original movement system was based around my beloved Source engine. In fact, for the majority of the project's development, I was using Valve SFX as placeholders until I could get it all replaced later. That was all I did on the first day, but there were still some minor bugs that spilled over to the second day that I needed to fix. That wasn't the only thing I did on the second day though. I actually got started on my first real level on my game. I was thinking of implementing this kind of fever dream alleyway to start the game in, before you plunge yourself into insanity. I was inspired by the alleyways from Chainsaw Man and that general odd summer vibe you would sometimes see in summer anime. After roughly outlining how the first level was going to look, I went into the third day now more motivated than ever. That was until some problems started to pop up. I had started working on the second level of the game, and the idea I had in mind was that the player would wake up in their living room, being awoken by knocking on their front door. The player would look out their window to see a city landscape going off into the distance, almost as if they were looking down on the first level that they had originally come from. The room itself would be rather messy, with a TV that was playing idle static with clothes littered about. I always wanted there to be a needle somewhere hidden in the room, implying that this psychedelic journey was in some way caused by drug use. After the player is done looking around the room, they would open the door to see a bright yellow light that they would walk into, thus concluding that level segment. Now, that's what I had in mind, but here's the problem. Level design is time-consuming. Because of the rules put in place by the Game Jam, it was highly discouraged to use outside resources not made by me. That also included using a lot of outside assets. That would mean that if I wanted to create this room, I would need to 3D model everything myself. This is all doable, but the problem I realized is that if I were to commit to making all of these unique set design stuff, I wouldn't have the time to actually figure out what the gameplay was. Because of this realization, I took a step back to really think about what I was making. During the fourth day, I went back to the first level and implemented a system that allowed events to be triggered depending on where the player was looking. I will say that this was by far the best idea I had come up with so far. I'll get more into it later, but let's just say the players also thought it was a really cool idea as well. Anyways, day 5 comes around and I needed to really sit down and think about how I'm going to go ahead and design the game's levels. Then it hit me. Liminal spaces. Liminal spaces don't have a strict definition, but rather, it's a feeling that elicits a specific type of surrealism within the environment. Think of a place that your brain regularly expects to be highly populated with people, such as a mall or school. Now imagine sneaking into those locations when nobody is there. There's this surreal atmosphere that comes with this once populated area being empty. Another path that liminal spaces take is that of minimalism. Take a hallway or office space that you recognize as being intended for human use. Yet when you look at it, it seems almost alien. Empty. If you've heard of the backrooms before, then you would probably be familiar with liminal spaces, as it's used heavily in it to convey its horror. With all of that in mind, how do I plan on implementing liminal spaces into my game? Well, a positive of liminal spaces is that it allows me to be more basic in environment design, all while allowing me to convey a feeling of uncomfortable emptiness. So taking all of that in mind, I built the main area using a mostly tile-based environment with pale white walls. From there, it was about controlling the lighting and trying to at least make the level design feel logical. And a brief side tangent here, but I need to talk about this because 99% of people would never think about this being an issue when making a game. But see these stairs? The amount of trouble they caused me is insane. I want to remind you viewers at home that my movement system was built around the Source engine, and because of that, I ran into issues that are also a problem in Source games. I think I'll let Mr. LED here explain this for me, and of course, the example game will be Team Fortress 2.
They create. What is that problem? Well, if I make a small staircase here in my test map and load it up in TF2, I think you can see for yourself. When I walk over it, my character teleports up and down each step, causing both him and my screen to jitter, which is an eyesore to say the least. You also can't trim or surf up it.
You wouldn't believe me if I said half of my day was spent just trying to set up the colliders for these stupid stairs. It doesn't help that due to the physics nature of my movement system, sometimes a player would just slide down. In fact, I bet if you play Aberrational right now, there's a non-zero chance that you might find a way to break the movement system when traversing the stairs. Anyways, how long did I spend talking about that? Too long probably, and that stair conundrum is how I ended day 5 of development. Day 6 marks our halfway point of development, and things only got more busy from here on. I went ahead and added in a player flashlight that I'll enable after the player looks around a bit in their room. I also fully outlined what would be the main gameplay zone that the game takes place in. Now I think here is the point where I can reveal to you the two major inspirations that I ran with at this point. My first major inspiration was the Five Nights at Freddy's fan game, The Joy of Creation. Specifically the earliest iteration of the game where the player is seen navigating around hallways trying to find collectibles, all while trying to avoid getting caught by Freddy, who's wandering the halls.
Oh, am I stalking someone? Hello.
I designed the play area in my game around the hallways seen in The Joy of Creation, with some modifications of course. For example, I specifically wanted to have a pool area that I based around this image I found on the r/liminal space subreddit. Additionally, I wanted the art direction to be more consistent with what I had established in the first level. Now for the second major inspiration, Gmod Nextbots. I think back to when I used to play Gmod by myself, in this barren map that had always had this ominous vibe around it. Then you'd spawn in a Nextbot and start running for your life as this thing does everything it possibly can to reach you. It can be pretty scary as well, as you guys can probably see from these clips. I spent the entirety of the 7th day outlining how my monster would work. I decided to name the creature you're about to see as the Aberration, so that's how I'll refer to it from this point going forwards. This will be the most technical I'll get in this video, but I'll try to keep things understandable for the non-programmers watching things. And before I explain all this, if you haven't already, check the game out! This will essentially be spoiling how the monster thinks, and it may take away from your experience knowing exactly how it works. Alright, you played the game yet? Perfect. Let's get going then. The Aberration will have 3 unique phases that it will transition between, specifically a stalking phase, a chasing phase, and a hiding phase. The stalking phase is exactly what it sounds like. When the player isn't looking at the Aberration and it decides to stop hiding from the player, it'll enter this phase. It'll slowly sneak up to the player, silently trying to catch them off guard. If the player sees the Aberration, it'll flip a coin. If heads, the Aberration will run away and enter its hiding phase, where it will do everything it can to be out of the player's line of sight. But if it hits tails, well, it'll enter the chasing phase. The player will have to try to outrun the Aberration long enough for its chasing phase to end, after which, the Aberration will return to hiding. It took me 2 days to fully implement the Aberration, with it fully being completed at the end of day 8. Additionally, this was the part in development where I realized I had only 4 days left in the game jam with no primary goal for the game. So I quickly slapped together an objective system which was to collect a blank amount of objects. Think horror game Pac-Man at this point. I also threw in a glitchy screen effect reminiscent of the Slender Man effects when the Aberration gets too close to you. Needless to say, I was super proud of myself as this had been one of the most complicated AI brains that I had ever made. However, by the end of day 9, I quickly realized that I had made some massive design oversights, and the way I discovered this was through the use of playtesters. This was the first time I had ever implemented player testing into any of the games before launching. I had previously made a horror game called Disquietude that I led the development of as a part of a game jam. That game suffered a lot as it was extremely broken at release, requiring over 5 patches that needed to be made before the jam submission time ended. It goes without saying that the crunch was horrible. Besides that, there was also the fact that because we never did playtesting, we didn't actually know how the player would feel or act when playing through the game. This led to players getting frustrated or annoyed at segments that we developers had thought was easy to understand. This time, I worked to avoid this problem. There were 4 playtests in total before the game launches, and instead of going over them individually, I'll just list off every change that was made as a result of the playtesting. Increased the number of collectible objectives made it so the second hidden secret in the first area was easier to notice, player speed was reduced. Running previously didn't change your speed, now it does. Players could outrun the Aberration and chase him down instead, resulting in the player becoming the true monster.
Hey, get back here! No! You're the monster! You don't get to run away!
This was changed so the Aberration moved at super speed when running. Resuming the game just wouldn't hide the pause menu sometimes, made it so the glitchy status effect would only show when you're getting chased, implemented a heartbeat indicator so the player would audibly be able to tell when the Aberration was getting closer to them, made it so the Aberration visual trigger would be your entire screen and not just when you look directly at him, fixed some buggy victory text font issues, gave more clear instructions to indicate how the Aberration worked, and slightly reduced Aberration speed. I'm begging game developers out there, it doesn't matter who you are, use playtesting more, because at the end of the day, you spend so much time working on your project that you forget to take in what the player's experience of the game may actually be. Anyways, day 10 was spent polishing up and implementing the changes mentioned before, and it was also a day that I posted the game onto itch.io. By this point, I had thought that I was done with the game and I was ready to wipe my hands clean and move on, but well, there were 2 days left. Day 11. After seeing some new player feedback, I had actually gone ahead and made some sudden last-second changes and additions, like changing the in-game font to be more spooky, as well as additional instructions for the player. I also added in one more new monster on this day. This monster would be referred to as the Mistake. I took inspiration from the phantom animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's 3, and the face itself was also just blatantly inspired from Shadow Flumpty from One Night at Flumpty's. The way that this monster worked is that I had 12 predefined spots on the map that he could appear in. Whenever the player viewed him, a noise would play and he would move to a spot that wasn't in direct view of the player. I had intentionally not given players any instructions regarding him as he doesn't actually pose any real threat to the player. Once you realize that he was pretty much harmless, the creepy factor wears off. But he's meant to distract and cause panic as players wonder how he works. Gameplay-wise, he also works well with the Aberration as he gives it cover in long hallways. Players may turn a corner and see the Mistake and think the coast is clear. However, the Aberration was actually being hidden all along. It was a last-second addition, but I liked how it turned out. And with that, rolls in day 12. With the final touches on the itch.io store page, I could now officially say that I'm done. Like I said in the middle of the video, if you're interested in checking out the game, you can find it by clicking the link in the description. If I were to say some final thoughts about this game, now that I've reached the end here, I 100% hear the feedback of the players. The fact that I had the Aberration work off a coin flip mechanic was just kinda bad. I never had the chance to figure out a unique system, but I can understand if the player has found the Aberration to be a bit random or unfair because of that fact. But given the short length of the game and the short development time, Hope you guys can forgive me for having to cut some corners. Either way, thank you so much for watching, be sure to subscribe for more content from me, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye bye!
Can you hear it? The pulses of the living. The ironic rhythm is a grand orchestra. It's never the same tone. Who wants to stop this? There can be. When the violent storm is over, blue sky is more beautiful than ever. You see, I want that, that's all I want. I dream to find the waves. I'll just be a black sea. I dream tonight. Please don't stop the flow. I dream tonight with wandering curse. I will be of this universe. I dream tonight a finite world. The finite one and the infinite one.
You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for my next video. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What, are you expecting some lawyer to show up with some shiny gold badge? Go, go.
Keep it real, let's keep it real. Oh.
Oh! One last thing. Subscribe.